Hey everybody, Dave Costello here, founder and CEO of Jetpack Workflow and host of Growing Your Firm podcast. Today's guest is Brady Meaux from Meaux and Co, and he is the founder of this accounting firm, and we're so excited to have him on today's episode because we're going to talk about, of course, the start of his firm and how he got his footing together, but we're really going to dig into the technology stack and how he thinks about automation and weaving all of these different apps together, which I think he's really ahead of the technology curve and how he thinks about it. But all that to say, Brady, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, for sure. Well, for people that aren't familiar with you or your firm, just give us a quick backstory on the firm, what you provide, who you serve, and roughly how long you've been in business.
Sure. So it kind of started as a side gig back in 2015 and eventually developed into something full-time mid 2018. Our main services, I'd say, kind of fall into three different categories. Do what I call financial management and accounting oversight, which is basically a glorified term for bookkeeping and accounting services. We also provide tax planning and tax preparation services, and then we do some. I mainly do some tax resolution services as well. So those are the three main categories I'd say that we provide.
Yeah.
What was it? So how long have we been around? How we got started, what we provided. Did I hit all the?
Yeah, and then what type of client? Is it typically like a small business owner or individual, or is it?
For the most part, yeah. So we've got tax prep. Obviously, we have a good bit of individual returns, but that's just through word of mouth. It started with friends and just continues to grow from there. And when we talked before, before this interview, I said, I continue to let that grow organically. And but yeah, as far as the monthly accounting, that's just small businesses. I'd say, 3 million and under is kind of where we're at right now as far as size of business that we serve at this point.
Okay, and you got your start, like you made the transition from kind of the side gig to full time in 2018. How were you getting your early clients? Was it all word of mouth, essentially, all referrals, or what did that look like?
It was word of mouth, yeah. So my wife is a CPA, inactive right now because she mainly works with just taking care of our small client at home. But she and I both met working for a large firm here in Louisiana, and so friends and colleagues, even when we stepped out of public accounting to shift gears a little bit into industry, people both knew we were CPAs, and people would always ask, "Hey, can you do this? Can you do this?" People were starting a business. Can you consult with us on this? And so that's why we said, hey, this would be a nice little side income if we start taking these types of clients on. And that's really it really, we've done no marketing. I've done a little bit of marketing earlier this year with Facebook, just trying to figure that out and see if it is worth it. I think it will be at some point, but right now, and since 2015, it's all been word of mouth through referrals from current clients, and then other people who we haven't worked directly with just know the type of work that we do.
Yeah, and when final question on like kind of making the switch to full time. So 2018, was it a matter of the firm just hit enough revenue where it could be pretty similar? Maybe it's a little bit more, maybe it's a little bit less than your salary, but you're ready to make the jump. Was that kind of the inflection point in 2018?
Pretty much, yeah. We were at a point where I wouldn't say Dave Ramsey always talks about getting the boat close enough to the dock, and we weren't. I wouldn't say we weren't fully pulled up to the dock, but we were close enough, and it was getting to the point to where where I was working full time, that was very much a full time gig. It wasn't just a 40-hour a week gig, plus keeping up with fulfilling work for our clients. It got to the point to where my wife and I continued to have the conversation. It finally hit the point to where I said, okay, we got to choose one.
Yeah.
And knowing that as we continue to grow this slowly, this is what I wanted to be doing full time. And so yeah, we weren't quite there as far as being able to replace what I was making full time. We were close enough to where we could survive, and now we've more than replaced with what I was making working full time in industry.
Yeah, and sorry, I said I was going to be the final question. Of course, it was the final question. So 2017, halfway through the year, what do you call it? Burning the candle at both sides. So when were you doing the
Yeah.
work? In the evening? Was it like 10 p.m. to 2 a.m.? Was it weekends? Like where were you
Yeah,
carving it
it
in?
was maybe a quick quick bit here during a lunch break, and then it was after the kids were in bed and working sometimes until 2 in the morning,
Yeah.
and then on weekends as well. But it was I was able to do that for the short term, knowing that it was for the short term. But I knew that. I mean, that's as anyone who's probably done that before, I'm sure you starting a business, you've done that, and probably do it at times as well. You know that that's not something working like that is not sustainable for the long term.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So fast forward today, full time, firm's doing well. You're thinking about adding, or you have added services. You're growing. Let's dig into your technology stack. So how are you piecing together? I think you run quite an efficient firm. So how are you piecing everything together? Full disclosure, we both know you use Jetpack Workflow. It's not an ad for Jetpack Workflow, but walk us through the technology stack, and then we'll walk through some of the workflows you've built out and some of the automations you've built out.
Sure. So I guess we'll just kind of talk through the list of different technologies I'm using. You want to start there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So Zapier being one, and which kind of that's the connector of all the other apps. So Zapier, Jetpack
How would you how
Workflow.
would you describe how would you describe Zapier? Because we get this question a lot now that we've integrated with them of like, what is Zapier? Like, what does it do? So how would you describe it?
Sure. So it's a tool that I guess the simplest way I would explain to accountants is that or other firm owners is it's a tool that connects different applications that you use, and helps automate and streamline your workflows. And the best way is to give an example is, you know, onboarding is one of the biggest best examples I think, and it's probably where I've gained so much time back with Zapier is I can fill out one form to onboard a new client, and I connect all the different applications that I want that client to be set up. And so, all of us as firm owners, we're going to have our clients set up in a number of applications, right? We want them in our document management system. We want them set up as a contact somewhere. We want them set up in our workflow system, in our tax software, in our own accounting software. And so Zapier allows you to be able to enter the information one time, whether it be Google form or whatever form that you choose, and it'll set them all up, in the background. And of course, the developers of those applications, Dave being familiar with that, you have to the owners of those applications have to develop basically a way for the application to talk with Zapier. But you're seeing more and more applications, widely used applications, not just within the accounting industry, but across the board, are being added to Zapier to be able to leverage its power.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I think there's now over
Yeah.
2,000 apps connected to Zapier to help them talk together. So maybe what we'll do is we'll walk through your tech stack, and then we'll walk
Yeah.
through specifically client onboarding, because you're absolutely right. Like, that is the number one thing we hear about. It's like, how do we get more efficient at client onboarding?
Yeah.
So we'll do a shotgun run through the tools, and then we'll dig into client onboarding.
Yeah. Like I said, Zapier, Jetpack. We use Intuit. QuickBooks Online, accountant version. Obviously, a lot of people, if you're doing QuickBooks Online, that's you use that for your own firm's accounting. I use ProConnect Tax Online as our tax software. Citrix ShareFile, HubSpot for managing leads. We use G Suite along with Google Contacts for email and managing contacts. Let me think what else. I use something called Boomerang, which is an add-on to Gmail that I can schedule recurring messages for when I want to send out recurring messages each month, reminders to clients. Slack, I use Slack for communicating with certain clients. Not all clients, but if you're a monthly client, you likely have a Slack channel with us. And let me think. I feel like I'm leaving some things out, but I think that's it. Those are the main ones.
Those are the big ones. And Slack, I'm
Yeah.
assuming everybody knows Slack, but if you don't, think Microsoft Teams, but not made by
It's a
Microsoft.
chat tool. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a chatting tool. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So we have the tech stack, and obviously one of the challenges is how do you build out these workflows? And like you mentioned, I think the client onboarding is one you've done an exceptional job at mapping out and automating. So Kind of walk us through the journey of what it looks like now once you sign on a individual or business. What have you automated, and how does that now work in your firm?
Yeah, so for an individual, say we get to the end of the sales process and we land a new, just keep it simple. We land a new 1040 client. So I will send them. I've got with Gmail I use templates, and so I've got an already ready template email with different links and instructions. I'll send that email to them, and then it has a link with it's a link to a Google form, and they'll go and fill out that form. And it's basic information, basic information that we want on all of our clients: name, address, phone number, email. If they're married, filing joint, same information for their spouse, date of birth. And so once they submit that form, that's when that's when Zapier kind of kicks in and starts to run what they call a Zap. I guess the Zap is the integration you set up, and then it starts to run a task in the background, multiple tasks. And so on my end, once they submit that, it's going to set them up as a contact in Google for me. It's going to set them up in QuickBooks Online, and by default, ProConnect Tax Online. It'll set them up with a specific folder structure that I want each individual client to have in Citrix share file. It'll also, did I mention Jetpack, that it sets them up in Jetpack?
Not yet, no.
Okay. It sets them up in Jetpack as a client there. What I do want to add on, and I'll kind of just take a quick sidebar here. What I do want to add on eventually is during the onboarding process, have them selecting the initial service we're going to offer, and then have that also set up, that respective job in Jetpack, and kick off any additional information requests, regarding whether it's a 1040 or whether it's we're just going to be doing some consulting. So I think
So if they're
those are
1040 client, it would kick off a 1040 onboarding job in Jetpack that you would type of thing.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely right.
Okay.
Yeah. And let me just give me one sec here. I actually pull up Zapier, and I can make sure I'm hitting everything that's being done.
Yeah. And I think it really highlights. Yeah. Sorry. While you're pulling it up, just to recap. So you land a client, you have a saved email in your email composition window. It says, "Hey, client, thank you. So excited to work for you. To kick things off, fill out this Google form." Once you fill out the Google form, the power of Zapier is it could send that information into your Google contact. It could send it into QBO. It could create a folder system within ShareFile. It can create them as a Jetpack client. And then, like you mentioned, maybe there's a future where, you could kick off jobs inside a Jetpack to
That's right.
onboard
Yeah.
them. And that
One
used
thing
to
I did
be.
fail.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
One thing I did fail to mention with the Google Contacts too is it's adding them to a specific group. So like Meaux and Co. individual clients, Meaux and Co. Certain groups. That way I can easily communicate. If I wanted to blast that group of clients with one email, then they're already being added to that email group. And then the last couple of things that happen is I send an email to them, just basically giving them the next steps on what onboarding looks like, and any additional instructions. And then it sends an email to me as well, just to let me know, hey, onboarding is kicked off. So and so should be set up as in these systems. Their initial service is this. Make sure that you follow up and request any additional information that's needed.
So you send the thank you email, they get the Google form, all that information gets populated through these various systems. Once they've submitted that form, though, you get an email saying the client's finished the form, and then they get an email saying, congratulations, now that you finished the form, here are the next steps. Is that right?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very cool. And by the way, what's that email say from the clients in terms of next steps? Like, what kind of message are you sending them after they fill out the form?
I can tell you right now, and it's probably going to change as we kind of evolve, but hi, so-and-so, thanks for taking the time to provide the initial information requested. It really helps streamline things on my end. I'm excited to start working with you. The initial service we will be providing to you is filling, because they select whatever the initial service is. Someone from my end should be reaching out shortly to request any additional information that we need to get the ball rolling. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out in the meantime, and I give my contact information, and that's really, yeah, that's basically it. Because we've at that point we've requested everything we need. On the
Hmm.
business side, it'll be different. There's, there are additional things like access to bank accounts and things like that, that in their email will we actually, I'll send an actual, kind of checklist of items that they need. Get us access to your bank accounts, get us your, articles of organization, and things like that.
Hmm.
Because we gather a lot more information from a business, obviously, than for an individual client.
Yeah. So for the business client, you send them instructions on how to connect the bank to QBO, and that's or something like that.
So we do that. We just get oh, here's something to add to the tech stack. LastPass. I do use
Yes.
LastPass to
Get a
manage,
password
which is
manager.
huge, because a lot of our clients, some of the banks that they use can't set up a guest user or like a read-only user that a CPA or accountant bookkeeper would want, and so they actually give us their login credentials, and so we store all that in LastPass, securely. We've got folders set up for. I need to check and see if Zapier actually has a integration with LastPass to set up the folder
Folders.
structure for. Yeah, to
Yeah,
get
so as soon as
make
your
a note of
mindset
that.
starts getting into it, the cool thing about this world is once you get used to thinking in this way, it's like every time you open up a tool or every time you do something kind of small, because each one of these small steps, not the biggest deal of all time, but it compounds for every
Hmm.
single client. I mean, this is probably, days per year that people could spend just inputting into this information. So then as soon as you hear, oh,
For
LastPass, you're
sure.
like, I wonder if I can automate it. So a lot of the
Hmm.
automation mindset compounds.
Yeah, and we talked beforehand, this is setting up a new client. This may take, an individual client may take 30, 45 minutes to set up in all the systems, but that's if things are completely uninterrupted. But what if, my
Yeah.
phone buzzes and I got to take that? And what if that turns into an hour and a half task? Whereas 5 minutes, it's done in the background. There's no picking up and putting down. That's what's really nice about being able to automate repeatable tasks.
Yeah. So for the listeners, is there when you talk about the business client, is it the only difference is that the follow-up email requires you requires them to plug in to send over articles of incorporation or add their bank information, but is the workflow pretty similar, or are there any steps that are additional in Zapier that you would want to call out to onboard a business client, or is it pretty similar aside from that?
It's pretty similar. Obviously, there will be more follow up, and so I would probably set up again. And as we talk, I mean, and as you probably know, with this automation, it's a constantly evolving process. You're always thinking of things, and you see something, say, hey, let me add this. Let me automate this piece of it as well. But even right now, as I'm looking through what we do for businesses, I would set up an onboarding job in Jetpack for me to
Mm,
follow up with, because a lot of times it's more manual. They may not be clear as to what they need, or they just may not provide it. And so, whereas for an individual, they provide almost everything that we need by filling out that form. With the business, it'll be more interaction, uh, following up after that. But that's not to say that as I evolve with this, and as we progress with automating certain things with Zapier, um, that some of those things that we follow up on may not be automated as well.
yeah. Yeah, and the fact that you're using HubSpot or other folks could use other tools here, Acuity or Schedule Once, but for these business clients, that thank you email, I mean, maybe it already says this, could say, great, next step is to book a 20-minute, 30-minute kickoff call where you're actually telling them,
For
hey, we're going to
sure.
need these other things, right? And so you shouldn't be
Yeah,
juggling
that's a
back and
good.
forth with the
Yeah.
email. You could drop your email calendar link in your
Yeah.
Zapier automation.
And you mentioned Acuity. Acuity is another one as well.
You use
Forgot to
Acuity.
mention that
Okay.
one.
Yeah.
I do use Acuity. Yeah.
So the cool thing there, I mean, we did a very Jetpack centric one with onboarding, but you could also do one very sales focused, right? It's like if somebody books on your Acuity calendar, it can create a contact in your HubSpot database and mark them as prospect or something like that, right?
That's exactly what we do. That's
Okay.
exactly what I have. If someone, yeah, that's the call to action on our website is to book a call on Acuity. We've got one appointment type for individuals, one appointment type for businesses, and that's exactly what it does. It creates a contact as a prospect in HubSpot, and then it also creates a new deal in HubSpot. So I know when I'm going in and I'm managing my ongoing deals, I know which status they're in, and I've got all my notes associated with that deal. So yeah.
Oh, it pulls the calendar booking information into the deal. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it pulls all the information
Yeah.
into the deal, and then again, and I'm building as I'm on a call and working back and forth with that prospect. I'm building out notes in that deal on that prospect. And the
Yeah.
nice thing about HubSpot is being able to track every time you've contacted uh, that person as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. So
Yeah.
we'll link up. We're going to link up all these tools. We're big fans of HubSpot. Obviously, we talked about it, I think, on our initial call.
Mhm.
I think this is really illustrative of just maybe some of the power you can think about in terms of automation. I think client onboarding is a great place to start. If you don't start there, start exactly where you just mentioned. One, get a calendar scheduling app. We like
Yeah.
Acuity. A lot of accountants like Acuity. Have it talk to
One
your
schedule. Yeah.
or schedule once or
Yeah.
Calendly. Everybody seems to like Acuity, by the way. I don't know. It just gives a new level of
I've
flexibility.
liked it too. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think one of those two automations is a great place to start. Brady, if somebody's listening right now and they want to reach out and say thank you for coming on, they want to learn more about you, what is the best way for them to connect with you?
They can shoot me an email, and I can provide that information if you wanted to add it to the podcast. Or it's easy. It's Brady@MeauxCPAs.com.
Awesome, awesome. And by the way, where do you go? You have such a pulse on technology and kind of new apps. Have you found any resources useful in seeing like what's up and coming, or like you discovered Zapier? I feel like early on. Is there any kind of technology site, influencer, whoever you would recommend our listeners to follow?
Yeah. So I mean, this podcast is actually probably the first time that I heard about Zapier a few years ago. But there's another Gary DeHart sends out. I think it's just it's an
Insightful
automated
accountant.
like once a day, and it's it's the latest and greatest, and it's just kind of a quick email, and you can click on links, and it's the latest and greatest in accounting technology, and I use that. I have those emails saved off, every day, and I'll go in once a week and just kind of browse through and click around and see what else is new and cool out there. And there's a
Awesome.
bunch of different Facebook groups as well, and all the major ones. You can glean a lot of information just from sitting back and hearing what other people are using, and go back and what I do is I'll see a new technology mentioned, and I'm like, oh, that looks fun. I think go check that out, and I'll go do the 15-day or 30-day trial and see if it's something worth using.
Yeah. I love it. We'll link up Gary's newsletter, which I think is the Insightful Accountant, and
Insightful accountant. Yep.
Insightful Accountant. We're going to list up the apps. And if you're listening to this podcast and maybe you're running or jogging or skipping or hopping or swimming, I guess people could be with AirPods. I don't like a commercial always shows people swimming with those kind of things. Maybe people do. I don't know. But you probably couldn't write down Brady's workflow, what he's talking about with client onboarding and all the different tools and how they work together. So if you go to jetpackworkflow.com/blog, jetpackworkflow.com/blog, we'll do a full write-up of the interview. We'll link up the different tools he mentioned. We'll link up things about Zapier. We'll link up Gary's newsletter. And Brady, this has been a real treat to chat with you. Thank you for sharing the time with us
Likewise.
today to talk about your automations.
Awesome.
All right, take care.
Bye.